Jimmie's just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. He gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's fucking terrible.
Oh my god! Hey, this fucking guy.
All right.
Jesus.
That's going in.
That's right. Hello, and welcome to the Intentional Wreck Podcast. My name's Jeff Page. I'm here with my fellow host Corey Russell and Finn. For folks who are unaware who we are, we're a NASCAR podcast made for fans by fans, spanning the spectrum of diehard lifers to folks just getting into the game. With this being our first episode ever, let's go ahead and let everybody know who we are and a little bit about ourselves. My name is Jeff, and I've been watching NASCAR in some capacity, I'd say ever since I was about in college. Started rooting for Denny Hamlin right around that time, and I haven't stopped since. And when we got into the COVID pandemic and NASCAR was one of the first sports back, I found myself watching just about every week because it was one of the few things that was on at that time, and I really haven't looked back since. It's pretty much been an every Sunday occurrence throughout the entire race season, which has led me into a whole rabbit hole of not just NASCAR, but IndyCar, F1, and plenty of the other circuits, and I constantly find new ways to get into the sport. With that, let me kick it over to Finn. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Finn. I have been a NASCAR fan. I would say lifer, but that's just been a short, 20 years anyways. Not that old. Not as old as these young bucks. But no, I've been a fan since 2004 when a neighbor of mine was a diehard Jeff Gordon fan. Their family introduced me to the sport. And they said, hey, you should be a Jimmie Johnson fan. And then he pointed at who Jimmie Johnson was. But I thought he pointed at the 5 car. So I was a Jimmie Johnson fan following Terry Labonte for all of 3 weeks before I realized, oh shit, Jimmie's actually in the Lowe's car. But I've been a diehard Jimmie fan up until his retirement, in which I carried over to Alex Bowman in the 48. So, kind of been in and out of the sport. Obviously, got that Patriots treatment with Jimmie winning 7 rings. So, but yeah, just been around the sport for a long time and really enjoy it.
Finn's a big fan of the underdog, as we can tell. Corey, why don't you let us know a little bit about yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Corey. I am I'm the resident new guy on the NASCAR following, and I've been following about a year. I'm a new NASCAR fan. This is the first podcast I've ever done, so it could be terrible, and I'm just here for you guys.
It's going to be intentional.
So he doesn't get fined.
It's going to be intentional, and it's going to be a wreck of a show.
That's true. My guys, Jeff and Finn here, got me into it last year. I'm a lifelong sports fan. I've always loved sports. I never could get into NASCAR. I thought it was boring. I did all the cliche stuff that people who aren't fans do, and I made fun of the turning left and all that kind of stuff. Right? No more. I've seen the light. They took me down to Richmond last year. I live in Northern Virginia. They took me down to Richmond, and seeing that place erupt when the cars took off, and feeling that engine power, and then to have Denny, of course, win there, the hometown guy wins it. It was a fantastic day, and I'm just gonna look back. So personally, I'm a Chase Briscoe guy. Finn and I went through the entire process of this is what teams are, this is what kind of cars they drive, all that kind of stuff. And I kind of landed on Briscoe, and I don't know why. It's just I feel his methods of racing just kind of slow and just always there. I mean, he's fast, but he's not blasting to the front. And then at the very end of the race, he's just going to be there, and then he's going to send it, and it's either going to be great or it's going to be what happened in Charlotte last year.
Very close.
We'll also add that Chase Briscoe has a very, very NASCAR name, and that was very appealing.
Yes, that's true. I was going to leave that part out because I guess I need to stop pretending that I'm not the new guy. Yes, one of my conditions for picking a driver was that they have to have a qualifying NASCAR name. They have to drive a Ford because I'm a Mustang guy. And Briscoe just kind of spoke to me, and that was that.
And his teammate Cole Custer,
guy of the group.
His teammate Cole Custer.
And we're going to get to that here when we start talking about off-season moves and why that kind of hit me in a certain type of way with my emotions. But yeah, I'm just glad to be here doing this with my guys.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. And it's one of those things that we always hear about folks wanting to, kind of grow the sport and get other people in, and there's always kind of that target market of like, how do we get folks who would normally not get into the game, who wouldn't really actually watch? How do we attract the other sports fans over and stuff like that? I mean, truth be told, the best way to do it more than anything else, get your friends to a race, take somebody to the track, get them to show, get them to feel that noise for that first time. And chances are they're probably at the very least going to come back with you.
It changed everything. My entire perception of the sport instantaneously. Didn't care about it for 35 years. And now I can't get enough.
Yeah. I've always told people that's something they should experience in their life at least one time. At least once you should experience that feeling of the yellow flag going, everybody crossing over that line, feeling the noise, feeling the rumble. There is no experience like it. If you, for some reason, are listening to this right now and you're not a NASCAR fan, and, even if you would have no desire otherwise to ever do it, go to a race. Go experience that, if nothing else. Back. One of the things I wanted to get to next, I think we should go over some of the offseason moves coming in. We're officially hitting that point now where we're edging into the NASCAR season. We just had the Clash, and we're coming up on that Daytona 500, so we're in that kind of lull where we're, we just got that taste. We just got that little bit, and everything was kind of grooving. We had something to get into on this past Sunday night. And now we can talk about what happened leading up to the season and get into some of the storylines. And one of the first things we'll get to, and as you can tell, Finn made this list, is we'll talk about Legacy Motor Club and the return of Jimmie Johnson. So naturally, I'm going to kick that one to Finn, and let's see what you think.
Well, I mean, one of the things that with Corey being new and us being able to explain them to the sport, it's almost kind of weird that I have to talk about Jimmie Johnson in such a past tense because the era is over. It's no longer the Jimmie Johnson era. It's the, as Corey would know it, the Ryan Blaney era of NASCAR, if you will. There's our first Ryan Blaney comment. We'll get to that.
That did not take long.
Yeah, at some point we should just have a counter.
We're gonna have to do it. So we'll get to that about Ryan Blaney. But the point is Jimmie was so dominant, and Dale Jr. said it best on a Junior podcast. I don't think that Jimmie got the love and respect at the time because it was just so frustrating to see him win. He didn't really have that quite following that Senior had, and of course Senior had the accident, and Petty, of course, he's legendary. It was almost no question. So I'm really excited to see, and then of course Jimmie retired during the COVID season. So I think this is a really good way of Jimmie to come back into a sport that he's so dominant at, make his name known in a way that isn't all about him. These 6 races he's going to do, I'm so excited about, but even more so, it's kind of giving me an underdog, team to root for. Noah Gragson's a young, exciting prospect. Eric Jones, a guy thrown to the side by Joe Gibbs Racing. Won at Darlington last year. Now he gets to, kind of shine. And of course, you got to wonder with Legacy Motor Club and Jimmie, how close he is to Jeff and Rick Hendrick. Is there going to be a Hendrick alliance, making that team even better, being able to even compete with the other small teams, guys like RCR, Trackhouse, and of course Pitbull. Michael Jordan, Trackhouse, and then 23XI.
Yeah, that's some stiff competition for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's
weird to not have JGR listed into that, but okay. Well,
small teams.
Yeah.
Well, I just
baby teams like JGR.
I wonder. I wonder if
we'll edit that out.
How I wonder if how successful Trackhouse and 23XI was part of the reason Jimmie was okay with getting involved into the smaller team like Petty GMS, now renamed to Legacy, because you remember, Jeff, for a while it was Roush, Gibbs, Hendrick, Penske here and there. Yeah, Penske, because Logano but like, you know what I'm saying? Until Stuart Haas really came along, and that's been prompted by Harvick. Like, there weren't really small 2-car teams that could really, really compete. Here and there, maybe snagging a race like Everham when they had Casey Kane and Jeremy Mayfield. But like now in NASCAR, we're having. I mean, I counted it down the other day with Corey. There's like 18 guys every week that could win a race. Realistically, and that's super exciting for me this year. So I think now we've added in 2 more. I think we've added in the 42 and the 43 as cars, and then of course those 5-6 races that Jimmie can be in. If that's a Hendrick prepped car, that's going to be a lethal car as well.
To that same point, one of the things about that as well is I think with Jimmie coming back and there being just kind of a fresh element to him returning, you got to figure he spent the last couple of years like taking a run at Indy. He took a run, in racing some different cars, raced a Rolex 24,
Right.
did a few other things that, put him behind the wheel where he was not he was not, as you made the Patriots analogy earlier,
Right.
he wasn't the Tom Brady coming out to step on the field to try and get that, 5th, 6th, 7th ring. It wasn't a situation like that. He's coming in and he's in a newer situation. He's got other folks around him that may have had more experience or may have had more things happening, more abilities, utilizing the tools that were put in front of them at the time. And now he gets to come in and experience NASCAR again a little bit from that other perspective, right? He's coming in and there's other dogs at the top of the pack at this point. Right. So he kind of gets a chance to just get in there and drive. There is, there's not that same pressure that he's going to necessarily have to come out there and just immediately be goated the second that he walks, he gets behind the wheel again.
Well, I would say, as someone who's really only watched like 3/4 of a season, I didn't see any domination last year. I didn't see it. Now I'm new, right? I don't really know what I'm looking at. But that being said, I mean, I've heard from, Finn talking about Jimmie Johnson in his career. He's winning 7, 8, 9 races a year. And it's like, I think I have those, numbers approximate, but totally domination, right? And it's like, I didn't see that throughout last year. There was guys, Harvick won 2 races in a row. But if I say the name right now, Kevin Harvick, in some way comparing him, right, it doesn't make any sense. Right. And it's like, I'm not, he's a Stewart-Haas guy, so I'm kind of a default fan of Harvick, but it's like, it's not that 2-week span of Kevin Harvick last year was probably the most dominant, the longest domination of really the entire season. And then it doesn't even compare. So I'm kind of not maybe as appreciative of the career of Jimmie Johnson, just not understanding the domination that he did to guys in his era. But I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing him drive. I don't have any frame of reference for what it's going to look like compared to the other guys.
And I think one of the things that brought Jimmie back is the horsepower increase that we saw last year to, what is it, like the 670 horsepower? Because when it was the 500 horsepower cars at the 1.5 miles, like Jimmie is, whether you think Dale's the best driver ever or Petty or Gordon, because there's a lot of guys that, like, again, Tom Brady, undisputed GOAT. Jimmie Johnson, he has the most championships as anybody but Dale and Petty. But I would not say that many would say he's a top 3 wheelman in the sport of all time, right? There's a lot of different factors, and NASCAR is just different than football, right? But I think without a doubt, something I've been able to say, and no matter if you put Jimmie Johnson as your least favorite or top 3, top 1, or even somewhere in the 5 to 10 range, Jimmie Johnson was the best 1.5 mile racer ever. I will take prime Jimmie Johnson on a 1.5 mile track against anybody. And the reason why is his ability to drive these 900 horsepower engines looser than anybody else and loosest fast in this game.
But can we see that translate this year? Right?
So, like that's what No. So I'm not expecting Jimmie to come back and win a race or dominate. That's to be so far out of the cars. I mean, I want to see him competitive, right? I'm excited from a nostalgia factor. Okay, this isn't Tom Brady coming back on the Bucks. Okay, this is like Brett Favre coming back on the Jets. This is, what I'm saying? We're not expecting to see, and if he certainly can win a race. I'll tell you that. For anybody who steps away, because remember, Matt Kenseth came back a couple years ago to fill in after Larson was suspended from his car after what happened, and he was largely uncompetitive. Granted, it wasn't Chip Ganassi gear, so I'm not expecting Jimmie to be uber competitive. He's going to pick his best tracks, and that's going to give him some sort of advantage.
And you think those will be 1.5 miles?
I think those are, if I had to wager, we know Daytona, we know Chicago. I would wager Charlotte's going to be on that list because every NASCAR team is out of Charlotte. And that was, Charlotte Motor Speedway was Jimmie Johnson Speedway for about a decade.
Gnarly last year.
I would say Dover's probably another race that's on there. It's not really a big spectacle race in terms of fanship, but that was probably Jimmie Johnson's true best track. And then I would expect maybe another road course. I mean, because of, like Jeff said, the Indy stuff.
Maybe back at Roval.
Roval probably might be a good one as well. Both of the Charlotte races. The crown jewel.
It's a best of both worlds kind of thing.
Right.
And the other thing I was going to bring up to what Corey was saying too, as far as like seeing domination throughout a season, you came in.
Right.
Coming in last year with the amount of parity that we saw, it's interesting at the time that you started, because that means that you missed Larson the year before, and you missed Harvick the year before that.
Harvick and Hamlin.
And the seasons that they had.
Harvick and Hamlin.
Fantastic.
You got to give. I don't give Denny Hamlin a lot of credit, but yes, Harvick. What it was basically, Harvick and Hamlin were in a field of their own.
Yes,
they were. One of those two was going to win this race. Didn't matter.
And this is the last year of the old car.
This is
that would have been the last year of the old car.
This would have been 2020, and then 2021 was the year of Larson. 2020 was the year of Harvick.
Oh, okay,
right.
So Larson won.
Last year was the first year of the new car.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Yep, that is the next gen. So, but yes, that was. I mean, so yeah, those were. Yeah, we got back-to-back seasons where it was like one driver, two drivers dominating. So the parity this year was something very interesting. For example. If you asked who your top 5 drivers are versus some of the other NASCAR fans that have been around, it is different. We make fun of the Blaney thing, but at the end of the day, you see what you see, right? It's hard to the eye test and be like, guys, he's running up front every fucking week. I don't like, what do you want me to say? I get we're going to roast you about it because we know how good he is. But at the end of the day,
are we going to do this right now? Do we want to just get the Blaney thing out of the way?
We're going to do that.
Let's get the Blaney thing, and then we'll go to Stuart Haas.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll kick off and move things forward.
You may.
Yeah, please.
Right. Okay, so these two guys, as a new fan, right? I'm just eye testing everything. I don't know what teams they're on. I'm talking May, June, July of what it was, the 2022 season, right?
Right.
I start watching with these guys. Yep. I start watching with Jeff and Finn. I'm trying to follow. I'm trying to keep up. I'm trying to root for my guys. I'm trying to understand how, talent isn't necessarily all that you need to go to the front of a racetrack, right? Like that's not all there is to it. Where you put Tom Brady on a football field, he's going to win some football games, right? Doesn't necessarily work that way in NASCAR. Now, all the equipment and all this stuff that we'll, I'm sure, get into at some point. But Ryan Blaney, when I first started watching, was just leading 50 laps every race, right? I understand he didn't finish. Didn't finish well. I understand all of this stuff. I understand that, races won is really the statistic that matters. However, I'm sitting there watching these races as a new fan with these guys, everything they need to know to talk, in an educated manner about NASCAR. And Blaney just leading and leading and leading and leading. Not winning, but leading. And these guys both made fun of me for being obsessed with Ryan Blaney every single week. And I'm a Ford guy, as I said, and I couldn't help it, right? Like, I'm just watching the race and saying out loud the things that I was thinking. Why is a 12 car in front all the time? That guy must be pretty good. And then from the peanut gallery over here, I get, he's not that good. He's not that good. You got to understand. It's just the equipment and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, that's fine, right? But that this is the aspect of being a new NASCAR fan that you just kind of have to accept that you don't know what you're talking about yet, right? But you can watch a race and watch a guy lead for 50 laps and still say, that guy must be pretty good, right? I didn't think it was an unreasonable take. I'm gonna let Finn here, who has been
hounding you.
I'm gonna let Finn take the other side of this because in our lives outside of this podcast, this guy has never stopped making fun of me for this, and he's going to continue to throughout this experience, I am sure.
Lock it in, baby. Lock it in. Get ready. No, first of all, I've got no issues with Ryan Blaney. I was a big fan of his dad, Dave Blaney, who I think is still racing or he's doing some kind of dirt track stuff. But he comes from a family of racers. Very talented guy. Yes, his first win was only because Jimmie Johnson spun out Martin Truex Jr. at the Roval. No, again, it's all perspective, and I think you're absolutely right. When we were going into the track, we took Corey here, we took Jeff and a couple other friends, and one of my favorite things to do, and again, if you're going to bring a friend to the track, this is what you need to do. You need to have them pick a driver, pick it based off their personality, the kind of person that they like, the person that they are, and then also, give them an upper dog. Don't necessarily give everybody an underdog situation, but Corey got Chase and things like that. And we gave one of our buddies Kyle Larson, and that's who we've been harping on, obviously, defending champ. Everybody's known Larson's potential. Now he's in a Hendrick car, won a championship and 10-plus races his first year. It's like, hey, we know who the big dog is now, and this is Kyle Larson's time to shine. That doesn't mean there's not other guys in that tier or close to him, but for the most part, we were harping on those names and guys like Chase Elliott. But again, at the end of the day, if you start watching a sport and one dude's up front all the time, your brain's going to go, hey, this guy's pretty good. And I would say Ryan Blaney is absolutely in the cream of the crop of the new drivers of this sport, the guys that are on the rise, right? Because Denning's older. Larson's not older, Elliott's not older, but guys like Logano and Harvick, as those guys and Busch and Martin, they're going to graduate out. Yeah. Blaney's going to be right up there. He's well on his way to being the chief car, the premier car for Penske. I don't see him losing his ride anytime soon. He's up there. He's well above Bowman. I'll admit that. He's a better driver than Bowman. He's probably up there. I'd probably say he's just ahead of Bubba, and that kind of skill level thing. But that's really what it was. It's just your perspective was just like, is this Blaney guy a top 5 driver? And I was like, I don't think anybody's going to put Ryan Blaney in your top 5. But one day
he was number 1 on the standings a lot last year in the middle of races.
Penske fans definitely would do that. And the other, I mean, it's funny you would mention Dave Blaney because I know, a few years back, like one of the first times that I saw his name on the scroll, and this was before I was, watching every Sunday. This was, watching any of the Crown Jewels or like, just general major races when I'd tune in. And I remember seeing his name and I thought it was his dad for a while.
Right.
Because I remember his dad driving the 7 Jack car back in the day. That's it'd be before Boyer and seeing, and thinking about Dave Blaney driving that number 7 Jack Daniels car, that's a scheme that I would love to see back. Just in general, I used to love that number 7 Jack Daniels car. But, regardless, I think the next thing that I'd like to lead into after getting through, now that you guys kind of understand that, unfortunately, if you ever end up hearing this, Ryan, we don't have issues with you. It was generally us giving our friends.
It's just them making fun of me.
Exactly. It's more of us.
In my naivete.
Power to you, Brian.
But here's the other thing. Now, this is the next subject I'd like Corey to lead us on, because one of the things I want to talk about is Stewart Haas. Some of the shakeups that we had, changes over there, seeing Harvick going in towards retirement, seeing Ryan Preece take over the 41, and I kind of want to get everybody's thoughts on that.
So the first thing I want to say is Cole Custer at Roval last year. You made a fan for life, my guy. You just made a fan for life in me. When you threw that block for Briscoe at the end of the race and he went flying past you to get moved into the next round of the playoffs, I thought, that guy is probably the single greatest teammate that I've ever seen in sports, because you just gave it away so that your teammate could go by you like you were standing still. And I respect that hustle. That being said, sad to see you go. Ryan Preece kind of looks like he's going to be really good. I mean, like, I don't know a whole lot about him. He was really good in Xfinity, it seems like. And just having watched the Clash 2 days ago, I mean, I don't think anybody expected halfway through the Clash with 25 laps to go on, granted it's short track and exhibition and all that, but Preece up front, 25 laps to go. So you start looking at, Preece coming into the 41, and Harvick's going to be retiring after this year. So you kind of start wondering, maybe new to the sport, maybe Custer comes back into 4. I kind of doubt it. But it's interesting. I think that Stewart Haas has a really, really good young core with Briscoe and Preece. They'll probably bring up another young guy next year to replace Harvick, and then you've got Almirola still there. Almirola's in his mid 30s, I think, maybe late 30s. Probably got a couple years left, and he looked good last night too, until he got screwed over by NASCAR in the middle of the race. But that's I digress. Yeah, what do you guys think about Preece?
I say, to me, Preece definitely passes some of those eye tests, like you were mentioning earlier. I think he's got a lot of talent. I think that we will be seeing his name for a long time to come. I think he's going to have a ride for a good while. I don't think that we're going to see a situation where we're watching him, bounce down and he's up in Cup one year and he's dropping down another or anything like that. I think we're going to see Preece racing Cup Series cars for a good long time. I think the guy has the skills to get himself where he needs to be. I think we're going to see him pull some top 10s this year, potentially might even take a race or two. Honestly, I mean, I don't see him coming out and having some kind of, insane rookie takes all type of a year, but I could definitely see him being a threat for quite a few races this year for sure.
No, so Reese is or Ryan Preece is he's a Tony Stewart guy, and Tony Stewart has got a knack for talent. Chase also big Tony Stewart guy. I think I'm not in the know on the Ford camp, but there's a lot of young drivers, and spots with only a limited amount of seats, right? So in terms of the Ford teams, you've got Penske, they've got their 3 cars, right? And for the longest, that was Logano, Keselowski, and then Ryan Blaney. And then, they've actually kind of have a 4th car. It's a Penske prepped car, but they're under a traditional team called Wood Brothers Racing. That's a 21. That team that's kind of bounced around. Matt DiBenedetto was in that for a couple years and was looking like he was the next big thing. All very, very close to winning races. But he's out. Harrison Burton, he was a young prospect for Ford. He comes in. He's the son of Jeff I think he's the son of Jeff Burton. Or he's related to the Burton family. Then you've also got you got Stuart Haas, which Harvick has got that seat. He was going to say Chase has got that seat. He's done. Cole Custer's got connections. And then Eric Almirola has got some of the best sponsorship. Smithfield Barbecue is like locked in on Eric Almirola. He's got a spot from sponsorship no matter what. So you've got them, and then of course Roush Fenway and Keselowski. They've got Keselowski. And they're not. The whole point is what I'm trying to get is there's not a lot of spots. And Preece has always been a talented driver. Every time he's gotten chances at lower series, he's looked good. Anytime he's been in good equipment, he's been around. And then now Tony, I think he made the point. So he's not really a young guy. It's kind of like Chastain, not really a young guy. He's 32 years old. So he's coming in with some experience. He's a very talented race car driver. So I think immediately putting him in some really good gear is going to turn out well for them. And I feel like Tony's really set in on making Preece have a chance. And then Custer has an opportunity to go down and perform well. And should maybe the 4 go, or should maybe Eric Almirola retire, I think Cole might be able to earn himself back. But even then, on the back burner, you still got guys like John Hunter Nemechek who are in Fords that are on their way up. And those are young, talented drivers at those various series. So it's all very competitive. But I think in the main thing, if there's anything that we should take away, is that with Eric Almirola looking good at the Clash, Chase looking like one of the best drivers at the end of the chase, right? He had some of the best finishes, average finish at the end of the chase there last year, and Preece being pretty talented. I think Ford's going to be on the up and up. I'm really going to expect them to do some good things this year.
You had a Ford champion last year as well.
Right. But yeah, just like Stuart Haas in general, I'm really excited for them because anything Tony Stewart does is they bring some killers and they go out there and win. Right, and I'll tell you what, there was a lot of good moments last year, but Chase Briscoe was responsible for my 2 favorite races. Almost my 3 favorite, right? But like the 600 last year, him running down Larson was prime Jimmie Johnson, Carl Edwards running somebody down at these 1.5 miles and sending it, and he couldn't get it done. But I mean, I just remember being on the edge of my seat for that. Of course, the Bristol Dirt Race where he was running down Tyler Reddick. These boys are aggressive and they don't hold back. Yeah. Harvick's been that guy, and Chase is that guy. So I'm excited for you guys and Stuart Haas this year.
Yeah. What about Busch to RCR? I don't really know the relation, and I know this is Jeff's guy, right? So I'm going to kick it to Jeff here for a second, but maybe Jeff, what is the relevance there of Busch to RCR?
For me, it's less about the relevance of him going to RCR as much as my heartbreaking for him not being with JGR. But at the same time, you had to figure it was going to come. It was happening. The writing was on the wall that it was going to be there. And we all knew that, Kyle was looking for a place that he could land, get somewhere where he was going to be able to work with, bringing up, it's his son that was coming up. And also he's looking for trying to work with his truck team. And at this point, Kyle Busch is a package deal. You don't get Kyle Busch without adding some extra packages to that to allow for him to operate in his way outside of the Cup car. So that's where part of that comes in. So, I think it was put best on another podcast a while back, I said he's got to find a billionaire. He's got to find someone with a lot of money to get Kyle Busch and get him out where he needed to go. And, it seems like RCR is going to be a place where he's got to be. I still have some feelings about not having him on the squad, but I'll still always root for Kyle Busch. I know he's a polarizing figure, and some people, you seem to either love him or hate him, right? I mean, for me, I generally love the off the cuff, generally just says what's on his mind. Some of the more legendary interviews in the history of, before and after races come from Kyle Busch and some of his moments. And it's what makes it so people can either despise him or generally love him. He does the I'm just here so I don't get fined. He's done that for NASCAR. He's definitely been somebody that really, he stirs up a lot of feelings in people. And to be honest, I think that's good for the sport. I wish him luck at RCR. I hope everything, goes well for him. Don't spin Denny and I'll be fine. So, I mean, that's kind of where I stand. I didn't know, Finn, if you had any.
Well, he almost didn't race this year. He got arrested for having a gun in Mexico this weekend and got charged to 3 years, I guess. But they got that all settled. I guess he traveled. He didn't know he had it in his luggage. For me, Kyle Busch, obviously. Allegedly. So Kyle Busch, if you don't know Corey, and if anybody doesn't watch on, right? Kyle Busch, 2-time champion up until I think a couple years. I think up until Logano. I think he was the only active 2-time champion in NASCAR after like Jimmie retired and stuff like that. So like outside of Jimmie Johnson, there was Kyle Busch. Tony may have had 2 or 3. Yeah, it's only 3. But one is active drivers. But Kyle Busch is widely considered one of the best.
Don't piss off the Tony Stewart fans, please. Please do not piss off Tony Stewart fans. I come from a family of Tony Stewart fans. We cannot have that.
Tony Stewart's in my top 3 best drivers all time, across the board. The man won an IndyCar championship and a NASCAR Cup championship, 3 of them. So, and for 2 different teams. So don't worry, we're good on the Tony Stewart front. But Kyle Busch is widely considered the best wheelman in NASCAR for the longest time. He's got an insane amount of wins across all the series. But Kyle actually got his start driving the Lowe's Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports in the what was called the Busch Series is now the Xfinity Series. So for me growing up, I really liked Kyle just because I'd watch Jimmie race the Lowe's Chevy on 48 Chevy on Sundays, and then Saturdays I'm watching Kyle race the Lowe's Chevy. Like it was just right there. Obviously he very emotional, wears that on his sleeves, isn't afraid to say what's on his mind, but every sport needs that. And you kind of grow to realize that he needs that, but he's never been a problem off the track. No character issues I can speak to, so I'm okay with the heel type of guy. But him going to RCR is very interesting. One, if you would have told those junior fans back in 2007 that Kyle would be driving the 8, man, they'd be losing it. That 8 is a junior number. No, I'm excited. I'm excited he's with Chevy, back in Chevy, because that's just going to make Chevy work better because of what you mentioned, Jeff, is that his truck team. It is the top truck team at all times. Whoever's Kyle Busch Motorsports or Kyle Busch, I don't know if it's Kyle Busch, KBM, yes, Kyle Busch Motorsports. Whoever's in those trucks, they're probably winning a championship, or they'll be competing for KBM. It. So I'm really excited for that. They just brought in a couple, names over to that. It's just going to be a very appetizing ride for Chevy. And I do think he can make RCR competitive. I really feel like Austin Dillon always steals a race every year. He never really wins and dominates a race. Austin Dillon just kind of steals.
It's a 2-car team, though.
Yes, it is the 3.
It's just the 2 of them.
It is the 3 and the 8, yes.
They'll pack a punch. I mean, that's the thing. And that's another thing that'll be interesting to see those guys, kind of trade up as they're moving through packs this year and as they get in and, things start getting down to it and they're in the middle of the, pile. I really think that you'll see some interesting racing from those 2.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken,
I think Kyle does a good job. That's one thing I really think Kyle does a good job at is being able to, get in and he knows who's friendly and who isn't. He knows how to get around the track and put himself in a position so he can be around friendly faces. And he can also help as far as getting somebody like Dillon propelled up to the front and use what he needs to get there. So
he seems like, to me, the kind of guy who, is, I think he's a little older, he's a good, he's been around a little bit, but he's probably coming to the, somewhere towards the end of his career. And for to have a guy like that as your teammate, I think is a really interesting thing, especially when there's only two of you, right? Because you're talking about how he has the knowledge, the wherewithal to get where he needs to be. And just as a young driver, just follow his lead. I mean, Austin Dillon, like,
Right.
you mentioned Finn, he kind of steals a race here and there, but I kind of remember 2022 season kind of noticing that 3-car being pretty good at some points. So yeah, I think it's gonna be fun to watch.
I actually called. Do you remember when I called the playoff race and I said, you know what's? It was the last one. It was the Daytona race before the playoffs, and I straight up told you at the beginning, I was like, you know what, guys, this really feels like a race that Austin Dillon's just going to win out of nowhere, and then he makes it through that.
I can verify that did happen.
He made it through that wreck. So, I mean, Austin Dillon. I mean, obviously that's the big nepotism case, right? He's actually the grandson of Richard Childress. I know that's not the same last name, but his
Right.
grandfather owns the car. Grandfather put him in the 3. Which was very controversial at the time. Obviously, a big weight to bear.
Right.
And they haven't been shy of running some intimidator-looking schemes on that 3-car either. But no, having I think if you're going to bring the intimidator mindset to RCR, Kyle Busch is the perfect fit for that.
Yep.
So, and they look great in the clashes. We're going to get to that, but they look great. Finished second and third. And they worked well. You already see that teammate working. Again, we're going to get to it, but, Kyle let him by and straight up said, hey, I know I'm not going to be able to get him. Go get him. And at the end of the race, and now granted, it wasn't a points-paying race, but already some teamwork. Kyle already realizing that he's not a Joe Gibbs guy. He's not a Toyota guy anymore, and maybe he's going to kind of do what's necessary to make sure that they have success.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, that's the last thing I want to touch so we can move on to some of the other things here, but the other thing to keep in mind is Kyle Busch is looking towards the future. He's got his son who, I mean, the kid's not even 10 years old and he's already been behind the wheel at this point.
Right.
He's already racing kart. He's got his own truck team. He's running that. He's trying to basically you got a guy who's looking towards the future as far as it can possibly go to try and make this generational, which, you can do that in NASCAR. That is a thing that exists. If you're good enough, you can, if you're good enough and you're relevant long enough, you can bring your kids up there and you can do things and set yourself in a position to do that. And I think Kyle Busch is looking way further down to play the long game here between that, his truck team, his career, and everything else. And just like you were saying, I mean, he's making a point now as he's moved on to, try and put himself in a position to play the role that he needs to. This does not mean he's not going to be an avid threat for a top 10 or a win just about every single week this year. But at the same time, like, I think we're going to see plenty of points in which you're going to see him do a little shake and bake with Dillon, and they're going to make some moves and, try and get Dillon up there towards the top. It's going to happen.
Right.
So with that, I think I would like to move on to the next thing. Let's have a little fun with this one, the Chicago road course. I think that this one's going to be interesting because we're looking at a couple different facets here, right? For one, Chicago is absolutely a NASCAR market, especially like up in that area. You got plenty of NASCAR fans that are out there. Now, to that same point, are NASCAR's biggest fans in downtown Chicago? No, not necessarily. And the other thing to also take in mind with this is, as of, I'd say within the last couple of days, general admission just to get in and see this race is going to cost you upwards of about $300. So this is not going to tap into NASCAR's general fan base market, but also this could, help the sport in different ways. We've seen the way that F1 takes over a city when it comes in. When IndyCar ran in Nashville, that was a very big hit. There's been a few other aspects here that I think are at play, but I think this course is going to be fun. I think it's going to be really cool to see these next gen cars come in and try and take up a course that's of a different style, like what we're seeing now. It's going to be interesting to see these guys really, kind of rip through some of these straightaways and corner through some of this stuff. This is not going to be your typical road course.
Yeah.
So,
well, I would say the biggest thing is if you want to go to this race, screw the $300 ticket. Just find an Airbnb on like the 10th floor of a building on any of these streets. Get on the hotel. You see the race from your damn window for, whatever it is to stay there. But
yeah.
But this is the layout. Got that on the screen there for anybody. And again, this is on all platforms that we could get them out to. But primarily, if you want to watch this alongside any kind of clips and pictures that we have, YouTube will be the best place. So if you're on an audio platform right now, sorry you won't be able to see what we can, but head over to the Intentional Rec podcast on YouTube and you'll be able to see everything there. Corey, what do you think about the layout?
So I think I'm the resident guy who is just generally bored with road courses, right? I was not shy about letting you guys
Didn't
know
take
that
you
in
long.
2022. Didn't take me long, right? There were points last year watching some road courses like Sonoma specifically in Road America where I was just like, this is the most boring thing I've ever seen. Like, I'm sorry, right? It's just not my thing. That being said, I am super excited about this. I think it being not a racetrack, right? And it just being on sort of city streets, being a person, who spent a good amount of time in DC throughout my life and kind of understanding how, the layout of a city works. I think this is going to be super cool. I'm so excited about this. And it looking forward now, I enjoyed the Roval and some of the kind of like modified road courses, but looking forward to the list of road courses that we're going to see this year, this is by far the one that I'm the most excited about. Like, it's not even close.
Well, I would say, again, you missed the Coda race last year, which was an absolute banger of a race. We had Ross Chastain catching Allmendinger, beating each other up. Then Alex Bowman catches them and sends it into the corner 3 wide and passes both. And the only reason he didn't win is because Ross wrecked A.J. Allmendinger into Alex Bowman on the final corner. And we'll have to go back and watch that. But I would say one of the biggest things was with the new car. This car and the new car was built. So what it used to do, Corey, is, and anybody listening, all the cars used to be built to where you would have a short track car, a couple short track car, a couple intermediate race cars, a road course car, and then a super speedway car. All the cars were built. They all looked the same body, but they were all built to be different and specific. That's how the teams work. This car was built to be a end all be all, a one way. It's supposed to be the same car that you can race at a road course that you would race at a super speedway. Obviously, setup differences and changes, but that led to some issues. So for the longest, for I would say the last 5 to 6 years of NASCAR, what happened is due to some issues with Toyota and other manufacturers, OEMs that couldn't make an engine that was 800-900 horsepower. NASCAR brought that down to appease the OEMs. Because if a Toyota, because remember, there used to be Dodge in this sport, but if OEM leaves, that's a big deal, right? Especially since there's only 3. So basically at 1.5 miles in larger, we were running a 500 horsepower engine, and at short tracks and road courses, we were running a 750 horsepower engine. Okay, so when we changed to this one car that has, I think it's 670 is what we're at. I'll double check my number, but I believe it's 670 off the cuff. What that did is it increased the quality of the 1.5 racing, which is why when we went to, and we saw Charlotte, we were like, this is nuts. Homestead, Miami, this is nuts. These guys are winging it. Vegas, great races. All those 1.5s jumped up because they went up in horsepower. But at the same time, Martinsville was a snooze fest the first time around. Nobody could pass William Byron. Richmond, while it was a fun time, the only reason Hamlin was even to pass anybody is because the tire wear was insane. But there wasn't 2 lanes at Richmond, and that's because those races went from 750 horsepower down. So the quality kind of got worse. Same deal at the road course races; they went down. So even though these cars are built that way, NASCAR has been doing a lot of testing and things, and we'll see they're trying to improve the quality, the passability of these cars. Now, obvious answer is crank the horsepower up. That's what every driver is screaming from the rooftops. But yeah, at the same time, so that's what I think. So Coda was good. Sonoma, you're right, but Sonoma is known as one of the true driver tracks. Sonoma is very difficult. So I get why the passing didn't seem to think, but that's because the track is so hard to pass. Watkins Glen is always a great time. Produced some of the best racing. Those are old Marcus Ambrose races, Juan Pablo Montoya races, Keselowski, Busch, all those names dominated out there. So I hope that they focus because they're introducing more road courses now than ever to the sport. I think it'll increase. So I would say try to reserve judgment in that realm. But I am excited about this because this is going to be high speeds into these straight up 90-degree turns.
Yeah, that's wild.
A big chicane. They're going to be ripping it. So I'm definitely excited. Another thing too, though, is bankability. Like these corners are probably not going to be banked at all because it is the street. And that's what sometimes allows some of that passing and momentum. and things like that. So I'm definitely curious in that realm if any of the turns are going to be banked at all.
So they'll just go in and bank them, even though they're not right now.
I don't know. This is the first time they've done it on a street course. And I also don't know. Like, I just know that some of the turns, like at Watkins Glen, you come out of chicane, and then there's a hard, come out of chicane, and you're immediately in a right-hand turn. That's extremely banked, and that allows you to carry momentum out of that.
Right.
So I'm just curious, and I don't know if that increases or decreases the passability. I'm just curious on if they're going to do it, just like the Clash this year.
For me, it's the setting, man. It's the setting.
Yeah, a city.
Like this is going to be cool to watch.
Yeah,
and it's not going to be like anything that I've seen yet, right?
Yeah.
It's just totally different, and I think that's very, very cool.
Sick.
Yeah, it's something to really keep in mind. I mean, that setting, it's unlike a lot of the other actual layouts of the road courses, right? Is that actual layout and the way that it is, it's almost like you're looking at two boxes.
Yeah.
And the 90-degree turns is going to be a factor when we actually see traffic coming in at these points where, guys are really trying to slow down and really cut themselves in. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. It's one thing when you see, Indy do that when they did their race at Nashville and they came up over the bridge and kept hitting a straightaway until they hit a residential area into a tiny little turn so they could essentially hook a U-turn and come back across that same bridge. It's one thing when you got an open wheel car and you have that ability to handle. It's another thing when you're taking one of these heavy NASCAR cars and trying to, come around a 90-degree turn with, I don't know, 35 other guys behind you trying to get back around that same corner. Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be fun. I mean, I don't know if I will ever get my dream of getting to see NASCAR trying to run at somewhere like Laguna Seca, where we're gonna see 4 cars off the ground on almost every lap, coming down the mountain. But either way, we're getting close. If we can do this. Come on, NASCAR. Let's get out there and do Laguna Seca.
But it's definitely been very encouraging with what NASCAR was doing in the offseason right before the Clash. They were down in Phoenix doing a lot of testing. 2 of the big things that they were testing was the 2-inch spoiler, and then even some of the drivers were trying. I don't know if they actually got to test it, but a 0-inch spoiler, no spoiler on the back of the car. I think that's Christopher Bell made a quote to Bob Pockrass on Twitter. And he said he didn't really notice the difference between the 4-inch spoiler and the 2.5-inch spoiler, but the 2-inch spoiler, which is the smallest that they tested, he said it was extremely better, and they hope they go in that direction. So, and that doing that at Phoenix is obviously important because that's the championship race, but also Phoenix races a little bit more like a short track, even though it's a little bit longer. So if you see improvements on the Phoenix type races, then we're going to see improvements in the Martinsville, and the Richmonds, and the what was that Gateway? I don't know if we raced at Gateway this year, right? And then as well as North Wilkesboro, because that's where we're going to be. The All-Star race is going to be. So I think NASCAR is at its best when mile-and-a-half racing is great and short track racing is great. Super speedways are going to always produce what they do, but if those 2 styles of racing can be premier, then that'll make the road courses feel fine because you're like, okay, we're road courses, then we're back to some great races. And then if the road course is a banger, even better. Another thing they tested was a muffler for the in-car noise. And I will say this, when I went to Bristol last year, that is the loudest I've ever heard a stock car race. And I went to every Coke 600 from 2005 to 2013. And I remember sitting there going, this is so loud. And at first I thought it was because of the Coliseum. It's Bristol, right? It's the only track that's completely encased. It was a fantastic experience, but it was so damn loud. And I was in the pits, and maybe it was because I was in the pits for the Xfinity race. I didn't hear it as loud, but the Cup race in the stands was just glaringly loud. And it looks like that's also an issue for the drivers, and just that these cars in general are a lot louder. So they tested mufflers for the in-car noise for the drivers because they even said that they were wearing some kind of ear protection from inside the car that they never had to use before. Again, Chris Bell said the mufflers increase the heat inside of the car, and that's something that they need to work on. So just a side effect, even though they're trying to test these mufflers out on these tracks, it looks like it's creating some heat problems. Hell, I don't know if it's related, but Ty Gibbs' car caught on fire at the Clash. I think they just said that was put in incorrectly, but I'm curious, last year we had our troubles with like flat tires bottoming out the car and they couldn't drive off, and some, Kevin Harvick's car randomly combusted into flames and smoke. So it looks like NASCAR is getting it. And then of course the concussion thing with Bowman and Kurt Busch and probably other drivers who didn't know, with the rear of the car not crumpling, it looks like that's something that they put a lot of effort in. So that's very encouraging from NASCAR.
We'll see, because, we already heard, I think probably one of the more notable things when came out of the clash was Bubba Wallace specifically noticing, like, when he got hit in the back, like one of the first things that he said, he was like, that didn't change. That still hurt. That was still bad. He was acknowledging like that difference pretty much right off the jump. But to the muffler point, and just some of the changes, we're seeing them adapt to this new car and some of the different things that they're adjusting to one of your points about the, to the clash, something else that came out is a lot of drivers were sick by the end of that drive. At the end of the clash, there were a lot of guys that were, yakking out the side of the car because they eventually, because of the smell, because of the gas, they're not 100% sure what the concoction was that was causing that necessarily, but that was something else that they'll need to keep in mind.
I had not heard that, but they need to get that figured out as soon as possible.
I wonder. Yeah,
we got a 500-mile race coming up in 10 days?
Well, I think that's just airflow, and they're slowing down so much with all the cautions that were going on. So I definitely curious to that what could have been different, and of course, how small everything was, right? But yeah, that's something to definitely track going forward. But yeah, I think NASCAR kind of made a W this offseason in terms of their intended direction changes, being a little bit open to some of what the drivers want. Now they're
listening to fans and drivers, right? Because how long have people been clamoring for? They've been clamoring for better short tracks with this new car after last year, and just in general, right? We've seen some die downs, where like I've heard you specifically go. What's with the horsepower and what we're doing on these short tracks, and what is with seeing the short tracks get kind of whittled down to not being the most interesting races of the year like they have been in years past.
Right. Yeah, no, they just got to improve it.
Yeah. But so something else that I wanted to talk about, we got new rules coming in. One of the things I think most notable, and I totally don't have any feelings about this one, is the Melon Man rule coming into play. With Chastain and his NASCAR video game move that he made at the end to propel himself to the championship for last year and slinging himself around the wall. That's now going to be a time penalty. Another thing to keep in mind, there's going to be no more stage cautions at road races. And I've heard some people say they should almost take that step further and do it at super speedways. It's going to be different camps that are going to happen with some of these things and the way these rules progress. And it's going to be interesting to see how they change and how they possibly modify and what they do next. I wanted to know what you guys think about those.
I'm going to take a victory lap here on the Melon Man rule, and I know Finn knows this is coming. I was so right about this. I was so right. The minute that this happened, where Chastain just sent it around the wall, it was in – I understand, everything we discussed at the time. It's you're winning a race, you kind of just got to go for it, right? But this was blatantly unsafe what he did, and in the modern, it was unsafe. And in the modern era, when we're talking about safety in sports, it is paramount. These brands cannot afford to have guys on the field or guys in the car or whatever or on the court doing unsafe things to give themselves a competitive advantage. They can't do it.
I don't think it.
Right?
So
and I called this almost immediately that NASCAR was going. This is the new guy, remember? I called this immediately, and I was shouted down like, no, they will never do that. It took not even a year. Not even a year for them to put this.
All right, so just to be clear, if memory serves, I didn't say that they wouldn't make a rule. I just don't think the rule was made under the guise of safety. We're talking about a track where your top speed is like 115 mile an hour, and in the corners they get these things down to 55. The speeds that he immediately dropped to after hitting the wall was lower. The reason why it looks so fast is because everybody in comparison is like 40 miles an hour while he's now just going 70 or 80. These cars are built for that kind of contact. It's not. I don't think it was under the guise of safety, because even when they do these at faster speeds, when we've seen situations like Larson has sent it into the wall on Darlington trying to chase down, and even what's his name, Austin Hill, the Xfinity driver. There was a race where he was chasing Larson down, and I think he cut a flat, so he just sent it into the corner and said, well, I'm not going to be able to catch him on the tire, so I'm just going to throw it in there. I can't remember if that was Darlington. That may have been the night before. Anyways, the point is, I didn't think it was a safety issue. I don't really think it's inherently unsafe in the car, unless the track has an on-track opening, which I can't even think of a track that does. For example, though, if you do go back and look at the Busch Clash, there's a portion on the outside where it kind of cuts out, and there's an entryway. Yes, if a track has that, absolutely an injury thing, because if he goes off, or if they hit it at the wrong place, or don't ride the wall, that's one thing. I thought if they were going to make a rule, they're going to make it under the guise of what we call spirit of racing, right? The whole point here is to race the track and to get the best position on the track possible. Throwing it into the wall to completely avoid the natural braking zone of the track doesn't make sense. And what I thought that they can do in a situation is, I thought they would put like a line. I know this is kind of crazy, but when we were talking about it, I was thinking they put a yellow line, kind of like how on super speedways you can't go below the line onto the onto the apron. It's yellow. Every other track it's white, but in the super speedways they're yellow, and you can't go below that line to pass, unless forced below that line, in which you're supposed to come back up as soon as you can safely. I thought you would put that on the outside of the turns of the tracks that you think that this would be realistically possible, right? Phoenix can't do it. Indy obviously can't do it, right? We can go through 30 tracks right now, but every track that you could for the Cup race, you put the yellow line on the most outside lane. You determine this is more of a safety barrier in case you get spun out. You cannot intentionally go outside of that unless forced up by on it. I got sent 3 wide. There was a wreck and I went up there. I was avoiding a wreck, but the whole point is nobody logically is using the 5th lane in the turn in Martinsville. And but it looks like they went the easy route, and they just said, hey, if you do what he did, it's going to be a time penalty. So
it seems like
this is a no-brainer if you're NASCAR.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I don't hate the rule. I just disagree with your premise that it was based off of safety. I don't think it's any more unsafe than what they're doing, beating and banging on each other at these road courses and sending it into each other all the time.
It could be optics, but it's also a matter of, I think it's more than anything, I think it's a little column A, a little bit of column B, but to both of your points, I mean, one of the things that made that interesting, we can definitely say it's not like people haven't tried it, but that is arguably the most successful opportunity. And when he made that move, I mean, that's not one in a million, but that's definitely like 1 out of 10 tries, you might get that successfully and not completely just, throw your entire race off by doing, you know what I mean? Like it'll
go down.
Go for broke.
Yeah. It'll go down as one of the best moments in NASCAR history, and deservedly so. I think.
And so that right there is one of the things. That's the part that gets me about when you come up with the safety discussion issue, is that, and this is where I think this had to come into that part of the discussion. You cannot in any way rule that an issue or a rule change that you made because of safety and then spend the next 50 years including it in every highlight package that you've ever included, which they will.
They have to.
They will.
They got to.
Sure.
Guess what you won't see on Sundays? This thing.
I understand all that, but here's my and from the beginning, right? It was the perfect storm, right? It was the end of the race. It was the playoffs. It had to have it. It was the right track. It was the right person, right? Let's call it the right person, because not just anybody on the on the circuit would do that. But here's the problem: as soon as they make it not an infraction of the rules, right? They have to put this rule in place. Someone's going to do it every year at Martinsville because it works so well. I mean, maybe not every year, but you're going to see it more and more where guys are in 3rd, 4th, 5th at the end of the race, and they're like, screw it, whatever, sure, let's send it. And then something bad happens, right? Or could, or whatever, right? I'm not saying I don't begrudge Chastain for the move. It was a baller move that will frankly go down in NASCAR history. Everything you just said, all of that is true. But if you're NASCAR, the CYA of having to to put this rule in place makes all the sense in the world to me.
Well, and the fact that you're wrecking somebody else's race car, so better fucking work. Because if it doesn't work, work going forward, somebody's gonna be really pissed. Why the hell did you just throw my $1 million race car into a wall to finish third?
Right.
I
don't get well, and that's also the person factor too, because I don't by any stretch have not gotten any impressions that the guys over at Trackhouse would have been upset at Chastain making that move.
I bet you know what? I kind of doubt Pitbull was real mad at the end of Martinsville.
No, probably not.
Well,
anybody up at the top of that Trackhouse
right.
team.
And Justin Marks is kind of probably the guy calling the shots. But yeah, I think they're happy with it at all, and that team's extremely fun to watch. Speaking of that team, though, I think if you look back at COTA last year, and most of the road course races, it was either Chastain or Daniel Suarez that looked extremely good on road course races. I remember watching the first road course race, and the thing is in the road course races that's different than any other track outside of maybe the super speedways, is that if you can come down and pit and not lose a lap easily, and not lose a lap and then come back out and won't even be caught remotely by the leaders. So there's been this thing, knowing that you're going into a stage break, knowing that a stage caution's about to come out, you can make a decision. Either you're going to stay on the track and you're going to win your stage points, or you pit a lap early and you give up stage points opportunity. But whenever, if you come out on pit road first or whatever, you might be sitting in 16th, 17th, 18th place. But when the stage break happens, all those guys have to pit, right? So then you come out first. And so now you have this issue where everybody's driving, and because of some weird strategy call, not even weird, just the same lame old strategy call, and the fact that you're manipulating knowing a caution's coming, you're able to essentially put yourself from 18th to first.
Oh, so that's what you're describing there is the impetus for
that's what has been going
of the stage cautions.
Right. It can't happen at any other track because you'll go a lap down.
That makes sense.
Right. So now what's going to happen this year is they've removed stage cautions. You're still going to get stage points. But, so last year, COTA, we start the race. Daniel Suarez is dominating. Nobody's touching this car. And just like Sonoma, it looked like he was in a class of his own. Stage break occurs. He gets cycled back to like 18th, immediately gets caught in a wreck. The car's junked. And I think this is a smart situation where, hey, we award stage points, but we want to keep racing. We want to keep this racing going. The leaders need to be up front. You need to earn your way up. That's the point of road courses, not to manipulate cautions to get up front, is get yourself to the damn front. Another thing, and a shout out to my man Greg Keller at work, longtime NASCAR fan, big Ford guy. He's kind of a Blaney fan though. So we'll apologize on his behalf for that take. But he said that the big thing is that these, with these stage cautions, caution laps on these 3.5 mile road courses take for fucking ever. And they just keep going, and they have to televise the pit stops, and they got to keep going around, and it's just a long time of watching. And then of course, if there's a single wreck out of the restart, rack them up, take 20 minutes to get through these things.
A lot more Whopper commercials.
So, oh Jesus.
Whopper.
I mean, with my limited knowledge of that makes perfect sense to me though.
It's a great rule. Right? It's a great change.
I think this one, again, it's a no-brainer if you're NASCAR, right? Because you're creating a scenario where you're any time a sports organization incentivizes giving up points, you know what I mean? Or like, I'm going to take a hit now to like kind of maybe do a little bit better later. Almost like you're like tanking. I mean, that's what it is. They're tanking the stage points.
Tanking stage points
to give themselves an advantage later. I'm all for this. I think this one's a no-brainer too.
Right. It's going to force you to have to make, and one of the big things that stages has killed in NASCAR across the board, and the old fans will tell you, is because the stages are broken up, you get a situation where you can't really make a race-long strategy, right? You can't like, hey, this track is notorious for green flag runs. We're going to try and stretch our fuel. We're going to be saving tires and taking 2 here, or weird strategy calls that you got to have all throughout of NASCAR up until they invented stage breaks. Because knowing, okay, this last stage, the longest stage in the race will be 100-something laps. But we know we're going to get a caution. Everybody's going to fuel up here, so everybody's essentially on the same strategy up until the very last thing. And then, of course, the race isn't quite long enough for that. if I told you, hey guys, we're going to go run a marathon, this is a Carl Edwards quote, right? One of the great racers of the 2000s. He said, we're going to go run a marathon and we say start. We should only be stopping everybody if there's a major safety alert that affects the competitive, situation and people's safety. But when you introduce stage cautions, it's like, hey, we're going to do a marathon, but after 10 miles, we're going to stop everybody and line them back up together. And then we're going to run again. And then after another 10 miles, we're going to line up everybody back together again. You're not running a marathon. You're just running until you get tired. And then we're going to run the last 6 miles of this damn marathon with everybody stacked up together. Instead of giving somebody who built to lead, who had the great strategy, who had the endurance of running the whole marathon and getting their lead, you can't just wipe it out, essentially, unless something absolutely has to happen. So I think, I don't know if this is something that we're going to require at ovals, but I'd like to see it considered. But I think this is the first big test for NASCAR. But I think regardless, at road course races, this is a complete dub.
So for my brethren that are new to this, quick guess, how long ago was it that these stage cautions were put in?
Man, Jeff, do you know? Pause the
This
video
would
and
have
Google.
been right around 2016.
You think it was 16?
Okay.
I want to say, yeah.
It was between 2016 2018.
Yeah. I was thinking 14.
I mean,
15.
we can look it up and find out from there, but I have a memory.
Do you have it Googled there, Corey?
No.
Oh, okay. I can.
Oh, do I have Google? Well,
No.
Have you ever heard of Google? Have you checked this out? You heard of this thing?
In 2017, NASCAR stages were considered a need to change to long-standing single-stage race events. Yeah. So 2017 was your quick Google of the day. So, but no, seriously, a great rule change. I'm excited. I'm excited for road courses this year.
I will.
All right.
I will withhold my judgment for one more year. Let's put it that way. If they
Give it
put
here.
on a show in Chicago,
Blaney's gonna win a
I
fucking
will-
road course race, and we're never gonna.
Well, here's hoping.
I'll
So
be
maybe
a
you
road
guys
course fan
finally
for life
shut up.
after that.
Hey, Briscoe's one of the best road course racers. If it's a shift where, if it
Yeah.
is a race where we're downshifting and upshifting, Briscoe's a favorite.
My man's loves shifting.
Well, let's put it in there. Now, this year we had, I got Corey to watch some of the Rolex 24.
Right.
And we were watching some of the Indy 500 last year. Hopefully we can get together and catch some more of some of the other circuits that are on, road courses. And you might see a little bit more of the compelling aspect of it and why bringing NASCAR to that is fun.
We need to get into that Australian V8 racing. That's what we need to get into. Yeah, we need to peep some of those races.
Like what
The
was this, the
supercars.
12-hour this past weekend?
Yeah, we need to peep those because they got some, and some of those guys have come over to NASCAR before, and put on
Some
a
of
hell
the
of a show.
gnarliest wrecks ever
Yeah.
in some of those races.
Yeah.
So I think we'll get to the next point. I think it's about time that we talk about the Clash. It's not like we haven't been talking for the last 2 hours or anything, and we haven't even gone over the actual race.
We're only
that
about an
happened this
hour
past
in.
weekend.
We're only about an hour in. So, and of course, no worries if we ramble because
Hey, and it's an introductory pod, dude.
I'm going to edit it
Could
in
be a
post.
little
Your
longer.
line was edit in post.
Edit in post.
I
man.
gave it right up to you, and you went.
That's right.
I was
Edit in
making that
post.
as comic
So-
relief for the actual episode itself, but hey.
So you want to talk about the Clash. So, for all of you guys that watch for the first time or historians of the sport, or Corey, who this was his first Clash experience because he missed it last year. For this season and last season was the introductory of bringing this exhibition race in NASCAR. This kicks off the season to the LA Coliseum, NASCAR race inside of a football stadium. While it is entertaining to an extent, it depends on who you ask. Definitely not Jeff. It hasn't always been there. I believe the year before we moved over to the LA Coliseum, they did a test and they did that at the Daytona road course. I personally, going back, I felt like that was a fun race.
Like the shootout?
Yeah, the shootout. So, it was originally called the Busch Clash in the 70s up until 1997, and then it changed over to being called the Bud Shootout, and then the Budweiser Shootout. That was the name from about the late 90s to 2012. Then the sponsorship changed to the Sprint Unlimited, the Advanced Auto Parts Clash, and then now we've got the Busch Clash, right? Everything's in sponsors in NASCAR, but who makes it in, right? So again, there's some little caveats in there, but it was primarily guys who won the pole from the previous season. Corey, for years, you were the Bud Pole winner. If you won the pole for a track, you were the Budweiser pole winner, and that means you got to race in the Clash or the Budweiser Shootout the next season. If you've won it before, you get a provisional in, and then after that, I believe it was like playoff drivers get in, and then if there's still spots open, champ points. So it's definitely an exhibition race, and it traditionally was not open to everybody. The guy who's dominated the most wins ever was Dale Earnhardt Sr. He had 6. Joe Gibbs Racing as a team has 10. They didn't win. Nope. Now they got 11 because Martin Truex Jr. So they've got 11 there. And then the most wins is Chevrolet manufacturer-wise. And then, of course, now it's the short track race. It was the road course. And before, it was actually just a super speedway race. Like a short, quick little sprint. Yep. Everybody would go single file until the last 3 laps, and then they'd wreck, and then we'd line it up, and they'd wreck, and they'd line up, and we'd wreck. And it was, I don't even know. Everybody would go, and they'd wreck whatever car they had been prepping for Daytona all off season. Actually, they probably had a throwaway car for that race, but yeah. But yeah, there's their Clash history breakdown, Bud Shootout.
Well, let me break into a little bit of very, very recent history and defend myself based on what Finn had mentioned before about the Clash. First off, one thing that I want to say is that I don't hate fun. I think that having this race at the LA Coliseum is awesome. I think that the concept of bringing, something like this out and putting a track inside of a football stadium is a cool concept. I also think the timing is fantastic, given the situation with trying to have racing in Southern California and on the West Coast in general this year. Right. As of right now, particularly having the Clash there, we're going to have problems here over these next 2 years in particular with trying to maintain NASCAR in the Southern California and West Coast area. You can't just have Las Vegas and Phoenix with Fontana being out of the question for the next 2 years. You have to have something. So having the Clash there is a good idea. On top of that, just generally the concept is cool. Things were fun. Them shaking up the concerts this year and bringing in, some different acts that other folks may not have instead of the same general country act to play in front of the show that was a cool concept. So I don't hate fun, guys. I promise that. But
you hate 16 cautions.
My God. Oh my God. Bruh, this is a quarter-mile track, and you had 16 cautions on the second stage. Let me paint the picture for anybody listening to this, just so you all know. We watched this, and I called this and made this happen. All right, being that this was happening on Sunday night, it was also at the same time that The Last of Us was going to be coming on. And I specifically was like, man, I want to catch both. But we were watching the first, we watched the first half of the race. Everything was hunky-dory. And then we get to the first couple cautions, and I was like, y'all, I bet you I could go and watch this episode of The Last of Us now and come back, and the race still will not be over. And you did it. I did exactly that.
From 60 laps to 3, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. You got back right before the end of the race.
You caught the tail end.
Exactly. And I still caught it, and I saw The Last of Us, and every part of it was, I enjoyed my evening there. It made it that much better.
Instead of watching cautions.
I didn't watch a Clash last year, right? And this was the first quarter-mile track I have seen, right? And correct me if I'm wrong here, guys. I don't think there is another one on the circuit, right? No. So I was fascinated by this race, right? Yeah, it was 27 cars on a quarter-mile track, and you're taking these super talented drivers and just stacking them on top of each other. It was awesome. Yes, the cautions were a bit of a bore, right? When you're sitting there watching them. And by the way, the caution laps don't count. So it just
and here's the other thing.
It would be meaningless.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Let's also note
that's why it took forever.
If you get a chance, take a look at how many cautions we had at the Clash last year at this track.
Was it as many? 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
2.
Right.
2.
So yeah, I don't know. I thought it was fascinating. The cautions, I get why that was annoying, but there was something about just these guys are just like, I get why it used to be called the shootout, dude. These guys are just out there slinging it.
They're gunning it.
They're right on top of each other
and
just sending it.
Dude,
and
it's fun.
Yeah, I think it was super interesting. And
the race while it was happening was really cool.
I think if you're one of those drivers, exhibition or not, that had to get the juices flowing to be in those tight packs, getting bumped, getting banged, and getting sent to the wall. So what if it's 45 miles an hour, right? Nobody wants to have that happen to them. And I don't know. I thought it was fascinating.
Well, exhibition races in NASCAR, I mean, it's money. It's money, right? That's the only thing you're going for is money. In first place, like for example, the only person that gets paid in the All-Star race is the winner. They get $1 million. And one of the big things about that is because the way NASCAR contracts work, right? The base level conversation I will have of how it works is you can either make a contract for the percentage of the winnings, right? So then you're putting your money where your mouth is. You're saying, hey, I know I'm going to finish in a lot of top fives, a lot of top tens, a lot of wins. So I'm going to have big purses going to me because of that. So I want a percentage of that purse. Or
incentive-based deals.
Right, incentive-based deals. Or like some other drivers do, they negotiate a salary with the team for X amount of races, whatever, and then they can make their own money outside on separate sponsorships. But then that's how they get paid. So no matter if they finish first or finish 10th or finish 20th, it's the same paycheck for them, right? So when you have these exhibition races, though, normally that's outside of that contract deal. So if you go win, you can get a bigger chunk of those exhibition races, pies and stuff like that. I'm not no NASCAR contract lawyer or anything like that, but that's just some insight as to why these drivers really care a lot more. In fact, some of those so the All-Star race used to be at Charlotte, and we'll get to that when it comes to All-Star weekend. But they used to
I'm just a small town NASCAR lawyer.
And those are some of the best races ever, dude. Shootout at a 1.5 mile track. These cars are flying at $190, and they don't give a shit because they can't take that car home with them, and they're not getting paid if they finish third.
So here's where I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to curveball you guys.
Okay.
Right? This is one thing that I, as a new fan, have had a lot of difficulty understanding.
Right.
The ability of you veteran fans to just not care at all. They are meaningless, these exhibition races, right? You find them to be utterly meaningless. Correct me if I'm wrong here, the only race that Blaney won last year was the All-Star race.
It was.
He wins the race. It was boring.
That is correct.
It was boring. So, to be told as a new fan that this guy that you've been watching lead races for 4 months at this point, right, goes to Texas, wins the race.
Right.
And then here comes these two guys telling me it doesn't matter. It doesn't count. Right. I understand that it doesn't count. Right. But NASCAR is the only sport that I have encountered, and I've watched a lot of sports in my life, where the quote unquote all-star or the quote unquote exhibition races, whatever, was not either a preseason event, which the Clash really isn't. Right. It's not like NASCAR preseason. It kind of kicks off and you have concerts and the cars are there. Right. I understand. Right. But between the Clash and the All-Star race, for both of you, I think I speak for both of you to say this race doesn't matter at all. Ryan Blaney, right, my guy that I get made fun of, could win both of these races every year, and still neither of you would give him credit for it.
So, and I'll let Jeff add in. My initial reaction was not so much because of the All-Star race and it being an exhibition race, but more so because it was Texas. Texas,
mad boring. I'll give you that.
Texas used to be a crown jewel race for me. The way that Charlotte. So remember how Charlotte raced this year when we watched the 600, and they're ripping, and you got some guys high, you got some guys low. There's multiple lanes of passing, and it was all about these guys, what we call off throttle time, right? Atlanta used to be like that, almost a carbon copy of this track, and Texas was the same. But Texas went through a repave and some banking changes a few years back, and it killed the track. Absolutely unraceable. There's not multiple lanes. It's extremely hard to pass. And what I'm also excited about is Texas got a repave this year in a reconfiguration. Atlanta's already been reconfigured to be damn near super speedway race, so I have mixed feelings about that. But Texas is getting repaid. But that's why I didn't care too much about Texas. Nobody could pass. He's out there. You get the lead, great. Nobody can pass you at Texas. In fact, he wasn't even dominating that race. Kyle Busch was dominating that race, and so he had a tire go down for no reason. And then Ross Chastain lifted him like 15 feet in the air, it almost felt like. So that's why. And as another fan sport, actually, or as a sport of other fans, fan of other sports is my language here. As a
sport of OnlyFans.
as a supporter of OnlyFans, as a fan of other sports, you often look like the baseball All-Star game, very fun because the way the sport works, it allows them to do things. Football Pro Bowl kind of has sucked recently because of injuries, and people don't really care about that game anymore.
Sean Taylor killed the Pro Bowl,
right? Things like that. The basketball, outside of when they introduced the Kobe rules, I felt like that game was largely uncompetitive, but the last couple years they've been good. But here's the difference between NASCAR and their exhibition races is that we don't have what made Jimmie Johnson so good was that they'd finish a race on Sunday, and Monday and Tuesday they'd be at the track. It wasn't Jimmie, it was Chad Knaus. Chad Knaus was his crew chief. He was obsessed with testing. So they'd finish a race in Phoenix on Sunday, and they'd be in fucking, Dover, Delaware on Monday. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're coming back, getting to Charlotte, getting the next car, and they're out testing. And they're testing for 2 days, and then they're flying to the track to meet the other car at where the track is. They tested constantly. They tested all the time. It was almost annoying how much they tested, and that gave them an edge. These cars can no longer test at the tracks during the season. You can't go and test at these things. So seat time is a very important thing. That's why when Hendrick announced the Le Mans thing, the Garage 56, and everybody's like, well, it's a next-gen car. Hendrick's going to have all this seat time in the car. And Denny Hamlin's like, well, what about us other teams? It's an unfair advantage to give them seat time in this car. That's why the simulator time is so important, because you don't get to actually test in these cars. Well, that's kind of what these exhibition races are. It's seat time. And especially at the next-gen car with everything that's so new. So going into the Clash this weekend, all these cars get to have a little bit of a feel of how these cars how they're going to shift, how are the changes that of the off-season made, And yes, no other track races like the Clash per se, but when we have the All-Star race, that's a short track race this year, and in the past it's been 1.5 miles. So, and they get to go all out because the whole injury factor isn't any different than any other race. And then they've got the prize pool. So I would say they matter to the drivers. From a pay perspective, it matters to the fans if a good show happens. I just hate Texas.
I would, and that's well put. I like it. To add to that, the thing is, I would definitely go to a Clash or an All-Star race. It'd be a fun event. It'd be a cool thing to go and be in or be a part of and go to witness. It's just I don't know. It's one of those kind of things. There's no.
Let me reframe the question for you. Does it provide the winning driver with clout?
No.
Why?
Why? I mean,
why less than any other race? They still beat all the other drivers.
No points for one.
Right, but points, they still had to win the race. That's been my question all along. Is they still had to go on the track and beat all the other professional drivers. For it to just be that doesn't matter.
Well,
yeah, but there's different conditions and factors that come into play there. Like I said, points being one of them, because you're racing differently when it comes to those. It's also sponsors that come into play when that happens. There's other factors that are there. As a fan, for me, when I'm watching that, and I'm watching this Clash on Sunday. I'm watching just to, get a kick out of the different surrounding, get a kick out of the thing. In my opinion, when you're doing the Clash, one of the things and trends I hope this sets, and one of the things that I think would be really cool is if you don't keep it at the Coliseum, for example, keep doing stuff you normally wouldn't do with it. Keep putting it in a football stadium. You know what I mean? Keep racing somewhere that may be a little more unconventional and make that part of the spectacle. If obviously, because I personally, I don't think the Clash should be worth points. I think it's an exhibition, there's nothing wrong with an exhibition. But at the same time, an exhibition is just an exhibition. That's kind of where my mindset sits on it. I mean,
it also depends how good the race was. I would say when the All-Star race was at Charlotte for all those years, I would absolutely agree with you, Corey, that there was some clout given to the All-Star winner for a couple reasons. Not only did you win $1 million and you just got to, get to show off against the best of the best, and when everybody's sending it, right? But also the next race was always the Coke 600 at Charlotte. So these guys are not only sending it, but they're also testing their short track setup, or not short track, but short run setups for the 600 the next week.
Right.
So there is an incentive for them to dominate, because if you're fast there, you're going to be fast next week in the 600. You know what I'm saying?
Or know what you're going to do to get faster.
Or know what you're going to do. Or you're getting all this track time and remember, this isn't an everybody in the race kind of situation. There's the Open, and then the winner of the Open gets into the final, and then the fan vote gets to vote a person in. But it's that seat time at the track we're going to race at for points the next week. I would say since they moved it, they went to Bristol one year, and they actually put neon lights under the cars. I have to send you the video of that. They had like little neon lights, those shitty dudes that they drive with the Honda, Civics with the like little LED lights underneath. That's what it looked like at Bristol, right? Exactly. And I think is that the first time they test the numbers being moved forward, Jeff? I think they moved the numbers for
maybe. I don't want to be on wax stating that at the wrong time. So
you don't want to be the guy. I'm going to Google Bristol NASCAR All-Star Race so we can pull this up here. Oh no, it was the inverse. The numbers were, all right, I'm going to share the screen. The numbers were at the back. The numbers were not only at the back. Oh Jesus. But you see like the lights underneath the car.
Yes.
That is wild.
Yeah. So
that is a hot take by NASCAR for that.
Well, they gave that a try, and that was where and then they decided to put them towards the front. So there's that there for you. A little history lesson with the
something
All-Star
people
race,
absolutely loved at the time.
Yeah. Oh, it was. I can't tell you what.
I'm sure it was
the reception was very warm and welcoming. And great, as usual.
NASCAR's a very accepting bunch.
There's usually that's one thing. If there's one thing about NASCAR Twitter, it's that when there's a change or if there's something new, people generally are very open and excited to it when it happens.
But now with the state of the All-Star race, I'd say cloud isn't necessarily the word that comes to mind for me. But we did have the clash.
It's confusing to me. Is all. And it's one of those things that as a new fan you have to just accept as kind of fait accompli. Like.
Right.
Not everybody feels
the All-Star race
do.
Doesn't matter.
Other people that
your favorite driver could win the race, and then all the other drivers' fans are going to tell you that it doesn't matter.
Well, the All-Star race.
That's where I think it comes down to it.
The All-Star race, I feel, matters. If I had to pick, right, on a scale of 1 to 10 of races that matter, every race during the season, regular season, is an 8, right? And then all the playoff races are a 10. The All-Star race is at a 5 to 6, and then the Busch Class is at like a 1. That's where I would put it. I would say if my driver wins the All-Star race, I'm pretty happy. Now, it's not points. It doesn't guarantee anything playoffs, and that's why we were saying it doesn't matter. But he was still the fastest against the big dogs, and they're normally at a track that's a little less gimmicky. The Clash right now is a very gimmicky track.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but I think that's a better way to phrase it, right? It's like I think of it from the perspective of, for me, if Denny or another JGR car or a 2311 car is, going out there and doing well at the Clash, like this year, like Marty got his dub. There are storylines that come to MTJ getting this win that I think are pretty cool. There's aspects to that I think are positive, given the season that Truex had last year and the way that he ran. I mean, some people would say he had a bad season. I'd say he had some good runs and had some bad luck, but also he didn't get the win. The most important stat that was there, he wasn't getting the W's that he was going to need to get where he needed to be. But he was
fast on Sunday.
Well, that's right. And that's the thing is when he ran out there at the Clash this year, this is a cool storyline for him because after the year he was able to carry in and see if maybe he could get some momentum. Getting this win, I'm sure, meant a good amount to him.
Totally.
In the same way that you shoot a few baskets and sometimes you just get up close and you want to see it go in, and you need to see it go in before you start hitting your jumper a little better.
Right.
And to me, I feel like it's effective there.
No, seeing MTJ get in victory lane, it 100% is going to shake off that rust. The thing about NASCAR, again, that's different than any other sport is that wins. Like, you could be a Hall of Fame NASCAR driver if you've got 15 wins across your whole career. You know what I'm saying? Like, 15 wins is, if you had to go on the list of current drivers with more than 15 wins, it's going to be a shorter list than those without. You know, it's extremely different. I tell you who doesn't have 15 wins in NASCAR. Ryan Blaney. No. Alex Bowman also doesn't have 15 wins.
I got you, Blaney. When you watch this, buddy, I'm your guy.
I appreciate your optimism, man. Well, let's get off of that. I think we've beaten the class to death at this point. I think we've gotten everything out of that we possibly could. I think the next thing, let's talk shapes and colors, guys. Let's talk about paint schemes.
Yeah, man. So what I did is, you know, everybody every year, there's new sponsors, faces in new places, and new paint schemes is always a big thing. So I figured we'd end it with a quick, fun look at some of the paint schemes that that have been released on Twitter, as well as things we saw at the Clash. I say best thing we do is, if you like it, thumbs up, yay or nay, and if you don't like it, let us know why. So first off,
the hot or not of NASCAR paint schemes.
The hot or not. So we actually got the only driver that's going to be running what they used to run, which is day and night paint schemes, is going to be Alex Bowman's. So we're going to do these kind of in tandem. The Bowman one, here's the day paint scheme with the purple A, and then here's the night paint scheme with the neon and the blurred A. So are we yay or nay on Alex Bowman? I'm a yay.
Oh, this is a winner.
Shocker.
This is a winner, dude.
I like the night one. I think that one's really cool. I mean, the day one is what you'd expect. I think that the night one is very, very cool. I really like that one.
Night one looked good on the track, or day one looked good on the track. Really excited to see this one.
Very linear, very angular, very cool. I don't love that it's on a Chevy, but it's a very cool paint.
Yeah, I dig it. All right, we're yay on Alex Bowman. How about this one out of the Keselowski Racing, the Castrol Edge schemes that they've got? This is a 10 out of 10 for me.
It's very cool.
Yeah, it's a nice like tie-in. I like that. I'm yay on that one. I think it's a cool like kind of callback, but also is a modern edge to it.
Right.
Anytime you throw the matte, the matte look in there, and it's awesome.
All right. Next is going to be Kyle Busch's net spend car. Thoughts on this one, yay or nay?
I'm a yay on it. I like the incorporation of the brighter colors. I don't think it kicks you too hard in the face. I think it's a cool one. I like the number on it too.
Maybe I'm biased. This one's a no for me.
Really?
But as a 1 year fan, and I'm amused by Kyle Busch, right? I have no rooting interest really, but he's amusing. And that M&M's car, like it's just comparing it to last year for Kyle Busch,
right?
M&M's pretty timeless, yeah.
Right. That one, the 18 M&M's car has been Kyle Busch to a T, right? It's hard to see him in any other scheme.
Right here,
I will say this:
put the driver in the car here.
Right,
doesn't look right.
Right. I will say this: it does kind of fit a little bit. It doesn't it's not doing the most now because it looks like the petty GMS cars are going away from that petty blue, and this very much has that performance petty blue look. So it'll be cool to have this on the track. But again, if we recall to that Bet MGM black and gold scheme he ran on Sunday at the Clash, that gives me major Kyle Busch black car running you down. You look up in the mirror and you see that black and gold, and you know Kyle fucking Busch is coming. I think that's a lot better of a look. I'm solid on here because I like the scheme. I think as a car in itself, it looks great. But you got to consider between this one and then there's also a Cheddar's one where he's got a big ass croissant back where it says Nestman. Croissants aren't Kyle Busch, okay?
No.
All right. If
M&M's are Kyle Busch.
Right, M&M's are Kyle Busch. So I'm okay with this one, but I agree with you, Corey. His teammate though, Austin Dillon, is going to be running this as his Bass Pro Shops Club car. I do like the almost green matte kind of feel. As with anything hunting, you're going to get that bright ass annoying orange. Are we yay or nay on this one?
I'm a yay on this one. I think it's a great car.
Yeah,
I like that scheme.
I mean, doesn't Truex run the Bass Pro Shops car?
Yep.
This is black though.
There are 3 Bass Pro Shop drivers, I believe. Austin Dillon, Martin Truex Jr., and I believe Noah Gragson has Bass Pro Shop sponsorship, but that also might be more of a junior motorsports thing. So I'll be curious.
It's a shocking moment for a lot of folks. You may realize Bass Pro Shops is a big NASCAR sponsor.
A lot of crossover.
I hope everybody was sitting down when I broke that news.
This one for me, it's not as cool as Truex's. I'm sorry. Truex got the black and red.
Yeah.
This one just doesn't do it. This one's
Yeah.
I'm not a hunter. I mean, this is clearly hunting vibes. I'm not
Again,
a hunter.
I like, if we're going to bring the 3 car, I just give Austin Dillon his own branding. Don't go to the Earnhardt branding. You want to stay as far away from that as possible.
Yeah.
Go away.
Because that's still the same 3.
Right.
That's still the Good Wrench 3 right there.
Right. Very much the same 3. So here is what Corey LaJoie is going to be riding around in this 7 Celsius Chevrolet. Thoughts on this for the small team?
Bad.
You bad on it?
I get down with the Stark white car. Why not?
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Maybe a little bit more on the side. You know, I just don't know if I like how that orange kind of fizzles out really early. Big fan of the top with the yellow 7 and the matte black top. It's definitely going to be a sleek car. And they're not doing too much, so I don't hate it that much. Pretty solid. I give it
It's a nay for me, and the only reason why is that the 7 should be the Jack Daniels car, and that's it.
But that's the 07.
It was a single 7 for a 1 point, was it not?
I don't remember. I remember Clint Boyer driving the 07 it was a straight black Jack Daniels car. Corey, it was the greatest thing ever.
I'm sure.
Thing just ripped.
That scheme, that was
right.
at one point Ryan Blaney's dad drove that car.
Right. So so there you go. There's Spire Motorsports, Corey LaJoie's ride. Oh, look at that. Where'd this guy come from? This is 84 Jimmie Johnson. Got the Carvana that he's going to be running at the Daytona 500. Now, Carvana is not doing too well in their money department, so I don't know if they're going to be doing all of Jimmie Johnson's races. So this is hopefully one of many schemes. But we're going to start with Jimmie and then get to the other Legacy Motorsports guys. One of the things you'll see across Legacy Motorsports is the matte black A-bar up and over the driver with where you see is the signature for the JJ. I like the yellow on top. What are you guys' thoughts on Jimmie's coming back scheme?
This one's it's fine. It's fine.
I'll tell you why it's good for Jimmie fans. So long term,
side number's good.
Side number solid. Jimmie was Lowe's, so his car was blue, white, silver for years, right?
Colors.
And then Lowe's left NASCAR, and he got picked up by Ally. Ally used to be what's called GMAC, and GMAC is a long-term sponsor of Hendrick Motorsports. Ally's got the bright, obviously Alex Bowman's car is big purple, white. It's not very Jimmie car. It's very much a Bowman style of car.
Yeah.
But Jimmie was very more synonymous with this kind of color car. So I think that this is really just a nostalgia thing. Just for me to see blue, yellow, silver on a Jimmie Johnson car.
I'll defer to you on this.
Yeah, it's definitely more nostalgia vibes to me. It's going to be exciting. Here's who is going to be racing for him. The 43 Allegiant car for Eric Jones in the top left. And then one of my favorite schemes, I think this looks great for Noah Gragson, this Sunseeker 42 Resort car. I love the silver and the teal there. The big orange color on the top. What are you guys' thoughts on these? Yeah or nay?
43 looks like it should be a Sunny D car.
Really does. That should be the Sunny Delight car.
I don't know. This is what I think when I see it.
Which is just weird to see the 43 as, I mean, 43 should be blue in some capacity in some way, but at the same time, like, I don't know. It's, again, everything about that. If I wasn't reading the words, I would presume that was a Sunny Delight sponsorship car. Like as it's racing by on the track without taking a closer look at it, that's what I would have thought I was looking at.
I do like the gray and the teal in the 42. That's cool.
That's sleek. I'm very interested to see if they just move away, like, again, from the petty GMS look. Now, the 43 has had some really good looking cars over the last couple of years. Their Tide car, almost untouchable. So one of the best ones. So I'm really excited for that one. And then here is Corey's favorite, the Ricky Stenhouse Velveeta cheese car. Take it away.
This thing, I saw this paint on Sunday, and I thought that is the coolest paint scheme ever. I think he's run something like it in the past, but like nothing to me says like, let's sit down and watch some sports than some just nacho cheese. I think this is the perfect car with the perfect paint scheme for NASCAR. It's just brilliant. They nailed it. I mean, they have nailed the melted cheese car look. If you're going to make a car look like melted cheese, this is what it looks like.
It's far better than the older Velveeta schemes that were out there, for sure.
We might have to do a mid-season worst of the worst. We'll do some worst paint schemes halfway through the season. How about that?
Are we going to do the cheesiest ones of the season?
I have a weird feeling Velveeta will be on both of these lists, the cheesiest as well as the worst of the worst. So just wait till, I wonder, the real thing when it comes to a Ricky Spenhouse car is, will the car look good after it's smashed?
I was going to say, can we hold off for that? Can we just make sure that we emphasize where Finn went with that specifically? What's your nickname for Ricky Stenhouse, Finn?
Ricky Spinhouse, yeah.
All right,
let's
go ahead and put you on the pedestal to defend that
never.
one.
No, never. You should have been. He dated Danica Patrick, and he wrecked her, and it was a big old thing. There you go. Fun NASCAR fact for you. This one's hard to get a good image of because it was just a rendering, but here's Christopher Bell's DeWalt's scheme, a throwback to, they've had DeWalt's on there, but DeWalt really came over from when I recall the first time I saw DeWalt was with Matt Kenseth.
Yep.
I think this fire. I think it's slick. That yellow is iconic, the DeWalt scheme, but also it looks a little modern with that gray on the bottom. I'm a fucking yay for this one.
That is, yeah. I'd say W's all around.
This one for me is right up there with Denny's FedEx car for the best looks on a Toyota.
Yeah.
This one is money.
The black 20 as well, black numbers. Yeah, fire. And then the last ones that we got two to look at. We've got the 24 Raptor car for William Byron, as well as the new 23 DoorDash look. Let's start with William Byron. I like it. If you remember last year, the Raptor car was actually that dark granite color. It was almost all of that with light accents with the yellow, and it looked really bad. It didn't really look good. And then he wrecked, and they had to go to a backup car. But the backup car, it used to be every driver had their own backup car, but now most of the teams, like Hendrick, will have one backup car, one or two, and they split it. So whoever ends up wrecking in practice or whatever gets the backup car. So it's, as a result, it's not painted like the other car. It's completely white, and they have to go in and do it after. So they wrecked, and they couldn't get the entire car wrapped, so they just wrapped the Raptor on there, and it was like a half white, half black scheme, and it looks so dope. Everybody's like, "Yo, this looks way better than the original." So I think this is a node to that. I think this is a node back to that. So now it's
awesome.
More
it's
white
awesome.
extension.
It's awesome.
I think it's sick now. If this is the way forward with the 24, I'm down for it.
I'm a sucker for. I like white cars just in general. So anytime they are heavy on the white with the paint schemes, white just looks fast. I don't know. Maybe it's just my weird brain, but that car looks fast as all get out. That 24.
Yeah. What do you think, Jeff?
It's definite yay. I like that. I think that white on the sides and the top makes it so I don't know. It's aesthetically pleasing. I can't really explain it 100% why. Like, the colors are great, but it's generally just it's a cool look to see the heavier white side with just the print being bold there on the sides, and the I like that.
Right. And of course the iconic 24 Hendrick font. And then the 23, I love how much MJ has got an imprint on these cars. From people don't like it, but that car that Kurt Busch won in
the 45 dude
at Kansas last year, based off of the Jordan shoe. I love it. I love every second of it. So this, anytime that Bubba's going to run something that's in the Chicago Bulls colors, it's going to be great. Looks fantastic. I think the car looks good. Yeah, people say, "Oh, it looks a little clunky." Nah, dude. I think it looks great.
I disagree. I think the blockiness of it, because if you're Jordan, right? This is the Jordan car. This in the 45. For those of you that don't know, the 23 and the 45 are owned by Michael Jordan. So this one just screams Jordans to me. It's what it's supposed to look like.
Right.
And you got the DoorDash, logos on there and whatnot. But man, this one, I have yet to see a 23 or a 45 that I wasn't like, that car looks sick. Right. And that's exactly like what it should look like if a car is owned by Michael Jordan.
I'm excited to see what the schemes look like for Tyler Reddick, because he's not primarily sponsored by Monster. It looks like he is going to have some Monster sponsorship this year. But he was running the Money Lion scheme that they've got for these cars, and it looks like he's going to bring his own sponsorship. So I'm excited to see what the cars look like now, because these guys don't miss, and neither do the Trackhouse guys. The Trackhouse cars. The only Trackhouse car that I don't like too much is the Suarez jockey scheme. He ran it at the race. It's the big American flag. Don't pin me as an anti-patriot. I just don't know if I like the whole flag laid across the car like that.
I love it, bro, because it's underwear and the American flag. What's better than that?
Not Ryan Blaney.
Ooh, okay. I do have, so, you know, as we're getting out here towards the end, one of the things I wanted to add about the Bubba car is that, for one, there's two factors to this. For one, I love the DoorDash car. I think it's great. The DoorDash car, for two reasons. For one, I mean, just the color scheme, the way that it's put together, it's generally gorgeous. But the other thing is, to me, you know, as a fan of 2311 as well, I think that the DoorDash car was significant, because DoorDash putting their stamp on those cars and becoming that big sponsor was a very legitimate moment for 2311 Racing in legitimizing themselves and bringing themselves forward. That was a big moment for Bubba Wallace. That was a big moment for 2311 Racing as it started to come out, and really, you know, kind of put a good stamp of approval on that. The other thing that I want to say is that the Jordan shoe paint scheme that they ran with at one point last year, I'd love to see them do that once a year. Mm-hmm. If Jordan would sponsor a car once a year and model it after one of the shoes, that'd be real cool. Awesome. I would love to see them do that.
Mm-hmm. That's a no-brainer if you're 2311. I'd be doing that. I'd be doing that once a month.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sick. So, I mean, we've covered it all. We got the clash. We got the paint schemes. We've got it down. We got an hour 50 on the clock at the moment. But don't worry, it might go down because
edit and post.
We'll edit and post.
Hey. So, do we have socials yet for? Because I want to do a little close so I can include that or whatever plug you need to.
So logo is pending and everything there. We've got the YouTube set up, so it'll be on there, but we will get socials, and they will be plugged here at the end of the show on a screen when we get those set up. So, and if not, if it's not there, if you're watching here on YouTube, they'll be down in the description below. You can find all of our links to the Facebook, Twitter. Twitter is where we're going to be most active. We'll be live tweeting the races, talking to you guys about the various things that we talk about here on the pod, as well as just, again, live reacting to the various things on the races. So feel free to hit us up on Twitter. And again, description below will be the place to find all of those links.
I think that brings us to the end of the episode. For anybody that's out there, thank you for listening and for checking us out. We have another episode that'll be coming out on February 15th. That's going to be our Daytona 500 preview. So I hope that you want to check that out. We will have some social media upcoming that you can follow us on Twitter, and you can check us out on YouTube. You should be able to check in your links below in your podcast descriptions to be able to find those. And we look forward to chatting with you.
Take what you want from